Hi, I'm Melanie Gabby, and welcome to this guide to therapy and healing, understanding your needs and the right approach. I'm not a doctor and I can't advise you on any health or mental health conditions per se, but I have worked as a therapist for over 25 years, run mental health services. I'm a life coach, yoga and meditation teacher, and I've worked with thousands of clients, teenagers, adults, and professionals. So, as we know, life is filled with challenges, and sometimes the weight of those challenges are overwhelming. So, if you're feeling emotionally stuck, mentally drained, or physically exhausted, it might be a good time to explore your mental health and well-being, and also whether or not getting support will help you. If you're feeling stuck and drained and exhausted, it can be a really difficult time to manage day-to-day life. So here is where we explore some of the benefits of therapy and healing practices. As someone with a deep understanding of both clinical work and holistic wellness, I blend the East and Western approaches with the work that I do, whether it's in one-to-one settings, in groups, or that I'm using teaching materials. So I've created this guide to help you determine if you need support and what might help you right now, and how those different healing modalities can transform your life. Many of the healing modalities that I talk about, I've also trained in and also experienced at different stages of my journey. And the key thing to remember is that life is a journey, and we all go through different experiences, and sometimes we need some support at certain times in our lives. Hopefully now we've moved on from a lot of the anxiety that people have about seeking help, because mental health broadly has been stigmatized over the last few centuries, and now we're recognizing that sometimes people need a place to go and talk to somebody with the confidentiality and the sense of safety that is created in those environments that can really support you on your journey. So the first thing I wanted to say is how to know if you need help. These are some of the key signs that we might think about as a therapist, that everybody goes through ups and downs in life. We all experience grief and loss, transitions in life, of moving out of relationships or into relationships, getting married, having children, getting divorced, losing a job. And these are all the things that can really take us up and spike our stress levels. We can sometimes move through those periods in time, however challenging, and start to stabilize and find our feet again. But sometimes we need some extra support at certain times for a variety of reasons. So if you're starting to feel any of these ways, it's worth considering how your current life experiences might be affecting you. So some of the key areas to think about is any persistent sadness, anxiety or stress with your daily life, any struggles in relationships that you've got, frequent arguments, feelings of isolation or difficulty communicating, any unresolved trauma, painful experiences that can affect your emotional well-being, difficulty coping with any of those transitions and major life changes that I described earlier, any physical symptoms of stress, headaches, fatigue and muscle tension. We know there's a direct correlation between the mind, body and spirit. Feeling stuck and unfulfilled even when life seems fine on the surface, or avoidance behaviours such as withdrawing from activities, people and emotions. And sometimes people can be quite introverted and won't realise after a while that some of that is a coping mechanism, and they've withdrawn more from even the things that they enjoy, or that you're using any kind of substances to help you cope and get you through the day or the weeks. So if any of these resonate, it might be time to seek something that support you to move further into different phases of well-being. And that can be also related to your opening up spiritually. You have some physical conditions that the doctors haven't been able to identify, and even start doubting yourself, or they start doubting whether or not they exist in reality, or that you've had some experiences of stress in the past and you want to be able to nip things in the bud, or you're going through any of those transitions. So the kind of things that are around and available, and I certainly know in the UK, because that's where I'm based, that these are some of the more usual and common approaches. So in terms of being able to access support, we have the systems in the NHS and the type of training that people have there. And I've done a separate video on that. If you look at my YouTube page on mental health in the UK, I describe a little bit more about how it works if you go to NHS or private services and what some of the differences are. So the basic types of support, of course, are psychotherapy, counselling, coaching, and also the holistic healing modalities that also have some research behind them. But the traditional ones that sit under psychotherapy and counselling is CBT, cognitive behaviour therapy, that focuses on your thoughts, your feelings, and how it impacts your actions, and identify the things that get in the way of you not just surviving but thriving. We also have humanistic therapy, often called person-centered counselling or therapy, and that is usually an open-ended approach where if you are in employment assistant programs, you might have between 6 and 12 sessions, and it's the same in the NHS. You might get offered 6 or 12 sessions to start with. Mindfulness-based therapy has become more popular. It's where we're using traditional therapeutic techniques, but also in the model of mindfulness. So as we know, counselling can be short or long term. There is an interplay between counselling and psychotherapy. A lot of people prefer the term psychotherapy because it really describes what it is that's on offer, and people can seek counsel or work with counsellors in different ways. But it can be on things like relationship problems, grief and stress management, and practical strategies to cope. There's a lot of therapists like myself who are trained in various approaches who also blend that with solution focus and coaching methods, so that you can understand what's going on for you, where that may come from, but also develop some practical tools to be able to move forward. So this is where coaching comes in. Coaching isn't a regulated service, but there are some basic requirements of training and experience that coaches go through. So if you want to look at any of the backgrounds of any of the therapists that you might come into contact with in these current headings, then you can look on the BACP, the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy website, and have a look at in more detail the differences between the different approaches, what to look for, how to identify a therapist. So sometimes coaching can help you set specific goals and develop a mindset. Some of my work also looks at some of the things that can get in the way of even setting goals, understanding what it is you're looking for, what you want and need, and how to create a future that you might desire. And not everybody knows what that is. So everybody's different. We're now more aware in the last decade on trauma and trauma-focused work, and lots of yoga teachers now are training in trauma approaches through somatic and yoga type work. EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing technique, has got a lot of research behind it, similar to EFT, to talk about how that helps clear trauma through guided eye movements or tapping. We also have somatic therapy, as I said, with a lot of yoga teachers, but a lot of therapists are also trained in somatic techniques similar to yoga. Trauma-informed CBT, so this may be more found in NHS services and less in the private services. So if trauma is still impacting your emotional and mental health, it is useful to find a therapist who is experienced in that area. It doesn't mean to say that generic therapists can't support you if you've experienced trauma, but there is a difference between past life events that are massively impacting you and you are having symptoms of PTSD. So for example, after a car accident I had several years ago, I had PTSD symptoms of nightmares, trouble sleep, lack of focus and stress, especially when getting in the back of taxi cabs, which still happens to me sometimes. But thankfully the experience of that trauma is massively reduced, but still impacts me from time to time. The other thing that I personally tried, after the car accident, I've had different types of therapy over the years. I did try person-centered therapy through the EA program that we had at work. I didn't find that helpful for me at the time. It was useful to talk about, but I found a different therapist who was trained in NLP and hypnotherapy that helped me through some of the processes he uses to really take the impact and the severity out of those trauma symptoms. I then later went on to see them again because when I had to deal with court cases and the aftermath of that, the support was really helpful to help me just manage and regulate some of those emotions that can feel like they spiral out of control, or that you've got no control of them if you're experiencing PTSD. And sometimes people who've had really difficult childhoods, experienced any kind of emotional, physical, mental abuse, will also have some trauma experiences, but won't necessarily realise how it's impacting their life and their current relationships. Either may start to exhibit some similar symptoms to personality disorder. Now, I'm using language that is clinical diagnostic language, and you don't have to be diagnosed or get diagnosed, but you may experience some similar symptoms that are classic of people who've experienced trauma. We know in mental health and public health services that the more adverse childhood experiences you experience, the more likely you are to have some mental health issues as you get older. However, people also have different levels of resilience and different support mechanisms that can help them and may never really have any real problems in their life. It's only when we start to hit some glitches, start to feel stuck, or are noticing a problem at work or our relationships, usually is a sign that we need to really think about what's going on and do we need any further help with anything. So other approaches that we know can support your well-being and improve your mental health certainly is diet. There are psychiatrists who are also now advocating for looking at diet and nutrition. There is a direct correlation with what we eat, and sometimes some of those foods that are classified as more unhealthy for us, like sugar and the issue that insulin resistance has on the mind and body and on focus. So diet and nutrition is incredibly important. Hypnotherapy helps you tap into your subconscious. I actually had hypnotherapy when I was traveling a few years ago because I had a fear of heights and would literally be gripping the sides of a bridge if I had to walk over it. And I was going over to the Amalfi Coast and knew how the Amalfi Coast looked and the sheer drops that you would start to experience if you was in a minibus, which I actually did do a trip around the Amalfi Coast, which is excellent at the time. But we're so busy helping someone else have a panic attack that day that I totally forgot whether or not I had one. So, but the hypnotherapy really helped me. And I worked with a practitioner who was also trained in NLP. So Reiki and quantum touch healing, two different methods and modalities, but both work on the energy systems in the body and our natural ability to heal and restore balance. Different people have different experiences. I'm trained in both Reiki and quantum touch healing, and I've integrated quantum touch breathwork into my yoga practice because it really can help increase vitality and start to help you feel a little bit more energetic. Yoga and meditation, of course, I'm a yoga and meditation teacher, and yoga really helped me get over some physical issues after the car accident. I practice a combination of yin and yang yoga. Yang yoga is classic sun salutations and dynamic yoga, and yin yoga is more about holding those poses for much longer and then being more restorative and healing because they work on the deeper layers of the body. Meditation, of course, we know both yoga and meditation have a lot of research behind them that support and promote emotional health and well-being and reduce stress. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, a lot of people in business or sales are trained in NLP. It really helps us think about the language that we use. Language is an incredibly powerful tool, and we can limit or expand our experiences and awareness just through the use of language, often talked about in arenas such as the law of attraction, how our language can really change things. Also, it's about the processes in NLPs, rewiring any negative thought patterns and helping you with personal transformation. So I'm trained as an NLP practitioner, and we ran different processes like timeline therapy, and that is great for people who are sometimes stuck in negative cycles and help them to start create new neural pathways that is now coming out of brain neuropsychiatry and neurology research to show how our brain lights up in different ways. And if we feed new parts of the brain, we can create those new neural pathways or messages that are sent and received around those different parts of the brain. Mindfulness and breath work, as I've said, that sits under yoga, but not everybody that teaches yoga teaches mindfulness, meditation, or breath work. You can get specific breath work teachers. You can get a really good shift in transformation and change actually with breath work. Some of the ideas around trauma is that somatically energy can get stuck in the body, or that we haven't processed those deep memories and trauma symptoms, and breathwork can be a really powerful tool, just as EFT and EMDR. EFT is the tapping, and there is, I've practiced that and done that with clients and had some really good results. How to work out if therapy or healing is right for you. So identify your goals. What is it that's going on for you at the moment? What challenges do you face? What's working well? And are you trying to overcome anything in the past and that's become more and more pervasive? It's in your head every day and going around and around in your mind. Have you left any toxic relationships that have had an impact on you? Or are you trying to discover a deeper sense of meaning and purpose? So the questions are like, what is it that's really going on for you right now? What would you like to explore? And there are different approaches. Lots of therapists can work with lots of different issues, but some lend themselves to a philosophy or way of thinking that can support you on your journey. So if you're really looking at a deeper sense of meaning and purpose and what's the point to our existence, death and rebirth, and the different aspects of life, an existential therapist is really trained by people like Emmy van Deurzen and Ernesto Spinelli, look at works of Viktor Frankl and the likes in terms of philosophy that look at those deeper aspects of human existence. Evaluate your readiness. Open up to exploring can increase uncomfortable feelings. And as much as we desire changes, humans are creatures of comfort and like the safe and predictable. So sometimes we can go into therapy and really feel that discomfort. One of the things that I think is important to remember is that learning when to put the brakes on and learning to cope with emotional overwhelm and tools for emotional regulation can really help. So if you are getting very emotional, it's about trusting the process, but also not being totally knocked sideways and not being able to function for a few days isn't good. If that is happening, you really need to look at restoring emotional balance and doing extra work outside of therapy so that you can process those emotions and not be scared of when that wave comes in. There's a lot of people who are walking around with unhealed grief and trauma, and unhealed grief can bring up those early stages of emotions that we experience at the time of when we lose a significant person in our life. So reflect on your needs. Do you need support or practical tools for managing stress, for managing your narcissistic psychopathological manager? Only 7 out of 10 of those apparently in the research are fitting any of the criteria. But many of us do struggle with the way that we're managed, or issues happening in the workplace, and the space to talk about what's happening to you in various aspects of your life can really help you clear some space, generate some clarity, and then even decide whether or not you want to do something about any of those different things. Or do you want guidance on personal growth? I'm noticing more and more with the clients that I've come into contact with that they really want to understand things so that things don't get worse, and develop some tools to cope if they do go through life transitions, or even really starting to look at what it is they're looking for and want out of relationships. Consider your commitment level. Some forms of therapy like CBT or traditional psychotherapy and counselling will want you to turn up every week and work on any of the issues that are coming up. You might want to contract 6 sessions, 12 sessions, or you might want something open-ended and leave when you feel ready. The only thing to consider is that it's good to have an outside network of support, because people can become very attached and reliant on their therapists, and you aren't going to benefit if you only have one person in your life that can really support you when you're going through different things. Just as it may be unrealistic that when you're in a relationship to expect your partner to fulfill every need that you've got and deal with every insecurity or anxiety or past issues that you've got. So it's really about being able to balance out, do you need further and deeper support? And trust your intuition. Go and check out some of people's pages, go on the BACP sites, check out any of the coaching websites that can help you look at what are the basic credentials. So to train as a therapist in the UK, it's normally a 3 or 4 year diploma, and that will give you the skills and tools and wisdom over time to work with clients from a range of backgrounds. Some people go on to do a master's and specialise in a particular topic. I know after completing my therapy training, I went on and did a lot of work with Mindfields, who were specifically looking at particular tools to help people who were really struggling. So my idea is that we really don't need to struggle to the degree that we do, and there are some things that can help us. So check out somebody, set up one appointment, say you want to check them out, see how it feels when you talk to them, and then decide what it is that you're looking for. There is a balance sometimes sometimes we can over focus on goals, and we need to be able to talk through issues in a deeper level. And sometimes we don't want to talk about the story or the narrative at all, and we want to use approaches like the rewind technique, EFT, or processes in hypnotherapy and NLP that actually don't re-evoke any of those memories, especially when that's linked to trauma. And you can ask for any advice from friends who've maybe been to see somebody. If you go and something feels icky, doesn't feel right, you can talk about that with the therapist, and the therapist should be open to helping you consider whether you're the right person for them and vice versa, and whether or not this is any stress or resistance on your part or any fear that's been activated. What I find is people who've grown up in abusive, stressful households and not had their emotional needs met, they may take some time to really develop trust with the therapist, trust that it's confidential, that they're not going to be judged, they're not going to feel shame and guilt. And if they're growing up with parents where there was any toxicity at all, then they're going to feel even more hypersensitive to the way that the therapist listens and looks to the stories that they're telling, for fear of being judged or being on edge, because people in those environments develop a much greater sensitivity to the micro details of communication and the way that we express, and can feel stress quite quickly. So it might be that you look at stress, understanding stress mechanisms, how that plays out in your life, and some tools to help bring down that stress. So again, that would be going back to some breathing exercises to connect each time with your breath, and some mindfulness activities as well. And if you can deploy those in your day-to-day life for 5 minutes every few hours in your day, we start to give the brain and the body a message that we're starting to feel safe. We create a safe environment, and we use these practices to help come out the stress chemicals that we're experiencing, and start to increase the feelings of well-being. That will take practice if you're somebody that has experienced a lot of stress or trauma in your background, but it is totally possible. I've worked with loads of people who have turned around, transformed their lives, and got results that they didn't even expect. Being able to move through things like grief that they may have got stuck at because they were at a certain age where the family just didn't realise that the child was really struggling to manage those feelings underneath, and they can bottle those feelings down. And sometimes there are sometimes simple techniques and tools that we can deploy that can really make a difference. So it's really about finding out what's right for you, and I'm really about empowering people to help tap into their intuition so they can work out what's right for them right now. So get the help that you need right now, okay? And Do check out any books online, any books that have been recommended. Be mindful if you've experienced any trauma or toxic relationships, not to spend too much time going on websites like Quora or other websites that talk endlessly about these situations, because what you keep doing is reactivating those experiences, when in fact we need to be building up more resilience, more positive experiences through a program that will increase your well-being. So it's good to recognize and identify what you've experienced, get some understanding about that, understand your own personal experience of that, the lessons it's taught you, and what you come away with that, and hopefully sooner than later, because many people, with the women that I worked with on a domestic abuse program, sometimes had spent 2 years, 6 years, 20 years in relationships that had slowly broken them down, worn away their self-esteem, their self-worth, and eroded their confidence. And that's what they needed to work on first. And the first step in doing that, whether they chose to leave the relationship or not, was to focus on those activities that can do that. I've got separate information on self-esteem, toxic relationships, stress and well-being, midlife. But for now, hopefully this helps. Do contact me if you'd like a free consultation, 30-minute session to see whether or not we could work together, or to find out about any of the group work that I offer. But check out my YouTube page. There's quite a few podcasts on there. I did one with Susan Finder, who works a lot around trauma and the therapeutic approaches to trauma, as well as the research that sits behind that. Otherwise, hopefully this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments, and sign up and subscribe to my YouTube page. Thank you.